Does traditional education deliver or fall short in educating and nurturing children? Introducing Aligned Learning Revolution, the show that confronts conventional norms and presents dynamic alternatives to transform education. Host Kahila Sivas tackles the foundational issues within classroom walls and advocates for holistic learning opportunities. It's time to reveal the strength of the innovative, holistic neurogrowth learning approach that goes beyond conventional teaching or tutoring methods, assuring every learner of a stress-free learning journey to unlock their fullest potential. Now, join Kahila Sivas.
Judy Smith, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Kahila. It's so nice to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Yes, I was looking forward to speaking with you as well. So, Judy, you were interesting when you joined me. You said, I want to do this. I want to do this. Yes, I'm going to do this. You're going to let me in, Kahila. So I did. Because I saw your heart to serve your students. So now here we are. So how has it been for you as a holistic neurogrowth learning success coach so far?
It has been amazing. It has been interesting. I have loved connecting the thoughts and the desires that I had as an educator to the science that you have studied and created in the program. I think I told you when I first started talking to you that it was like you had been inside my brain and written down all of my thoughts and philosophies. And it's just amazing that what we have to offer as learning success coaches is so aligned with not just what the kids need mentally and as learners and as children, but in their mind, that we can produce what they don't even know they need yet because it's so in tune to how their brain develops.
Yeah, you put it very, very nicely. That's amazing. It's amazing. So you have been working with some students. What do you offer families right now in your program, in your practice?
I offer families just some peace and calmness that comes when children say, no, I don't want to read. I don't like to read. I hate to read. I hate to write. I can't. I don't know how. And I give them the solution for that. One thing I do directly for the parents is I take that stress off of the parents to get their children to read and write so they can focus on building strong relationships with their children and not continuing to have this rocky relationship where education and learning and homework is always rocking the boat. There's always that anxiety underlying. When I'm working with the children, they're happy, they're calm. I'm only focused on them at that moment, whereas they're, as parents, we're always focused on a million things and always under a million stresses. But I'm only focused on them. They have my individual attention and they don't feel that pressure to perform for me like they feel the pressure to perform for a parent or a teacher, so they can be themselves and let all those anxieties go and see that things are holding them back that they can work around, that we can learn to conquer and work around the anxieties and the pressures of our life. And we can all be successful. And we all have strengths that we can build upon to develop even more strengths.
Yes, absolutely. Is this possible to achieve in the school system?
I think it's the dream of every teacher to achieve it. But given the parameters that they have to work under and the number of outside influences coming into the classroom, they don't have the time to do it. And I know it breaks their hearts because that's why they're there in the first place.
Yes. And you've been doing this for how long, Judy?
Teaching
or teaching?
I just completed my 29th year.
Wow. 29 years. And a librarian.
Yes, I finished 19 years as a librarian.
Yeah. Yes. So reading is something you love because obviously you're a librarian. You must love books.
It is. I fell into the library by accident and I actually completely and totally loved it and loved the relationship that I was able to have with the kids, which similarly is almost like the relationship that I can have with them as a neurogrowth holistic learning success coach. The teachers can't have it because they have too many kids all at one time. Too many constraints. I didn't have that as a librarian. So I was able to start developing some of those relationships with them and help them just get to the point where like, I can finish a whole book and I can talk about a book. But I've absolutely loved it. And reading is just the basis of everything that they need to do to be successful in all their other subjects.
Such a confident booster, right? When you can read.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you're struggling to even get the directions read, then the outlook you have on your success on the assignment or the task is going to be minimum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even for math, if you don't know how to read, you're not going to know what they're asking.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's such an important skill. And we're seeing such a drop in so many kids' life. They're not reading. They're not reading yet, right? When is what can a parents do to start fostering reading? Like, what can they do?
Well, the number one indicator to a child's future success in literacy is how many books are in the home. So just having books available in the home is already a step. The next thing that the parents can do is read to their kids. The kids need to see that reading is a part of life. It's not a grade and it's not an assignment. Yeah. They need to see their parents reading, and not just reading on their phones, but they need to see their parents using words and letters and literature to get things accomplished. They need to read a recipe out loud while they're cooking dinner with their kids. I remember when my daughter I was giving her a bottle and I had a big old Winnie the Pooh book open and I was reading to her and I was feeding her a bottle. And my niece said, "That is the craziest thing. Why in the world would you do that? Why are you trying to read to your daughter while you're feeding her a bottle?" Because she will hear the written language every day of her life. She will need to know that the written language is important and necessary to function. So she will hear me read to her every day she is with me. And she's home from college and 21 years old, and we still sit down and read whatever we're doing that day. We find something to read together.
Oh, so you made it into a tradition now. Like it is.
It is. If we go somewhere and we're at a museum or wherever we are, there's always a plaque on a building.
Yeah.
And even now, she stops and we read it. If there's something to read, we read it. You never know what you're going to miss. And when parents take those little bitty tiny steps, it reinforces the importance of being able to read and the importance of taking time to read to the kids. They see it as a life skill rather than an assignment.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, you're right. So make reading not an assignment where you're doing it for homework or forced by the teacher. Forced by the teacher.
I mean, we have to read when we go fill out our application for our driver's license. We have to read the lease agreement before we rent a place to live. We have to read the sale ads if we need to save money at the grocery store. We have to read to accomplish driving a car, to navigate the road signs and the maps. And
reading is never stops. Everywhere.
It's a part of our life. It's not an assignment. It's not a grade. It's not something that we only do during school hours or work hours. And I have to see that.
I find that some parents are starting really, really early. Like I see some young parents, like their kids are like 1 or 2. They're not reading yet. Reading is it should be not as something you compare, right? Like some people say, my other son is reading at 2. My the older one read at 2. My younger one's not even saying a word at. Should we compare like that, or is there?
We should not. As a librarian, I have kids reading on all different levels. They might be in one grade level, but we're reading on all different reading levels. And I always tell the kids, because inevitably they're going to compare. Well, why do I read this book, but he can read this book? I've always compared reading level growth to our feet. We are all the same age in a classroom, but let's all take off our shoes and look at our feet. They're all different sizes. And that's okay. We're all still walking. We're all still running. We're all still playing at recess, but we grow and develop at different times. We can see the physical growth and development is different, and we accept that. But mentally and in our minds and our brains, they grow at different rates and speeds as well, and that's okay. In the end, we're going to level out and not be able to function to the degree that we need to function.
So what programs do you offer right now? Reading and writing, yeah?
I offer reading and writing. I have Right Start, which is for the little ones that are having a difficult time getting the concept that these sounds have a visual connection to a letter. And that's the beginning stages of writing. I have Reading Ready, where they're ready to start taking the sounds and the alphabet we've sung with them and the word games we've played with them and all their little toys that have the sounds and make them into words that are first recognized individually and then recognized in conjunction with other words to create sentences, the early stages of reading. And then I have programs for writing that are for middle-aged students, writing recovery, where we go, there's a lot of habits that are formed in texting that the kids do and the chatting and the kind of the shorthand they use. Mm-hmm. And there's a big challenge right now with them taking their skills to write on these online platforms and write correctly with correct grammar and punctuation and mechanics and all of that to make professional writing and academic writing. So when they have to put the grammar and everything with it, all of a sudden they're saying, I don't know what to write. But they can write paragraphs and paragraphs on a chat or a text message. Yeah. So that's kind of a
half of the words are not words.
It's kind of a mental game with them to get them to see that, oh, okay, I'm taking what I'm thinking and what I can say out loud and I'm just putting it in a different format.
Yeah.
And so, just really relearning the writing stages.
What's a younger parent can start doing today with their kids at home for reading?
For reading?
Yeah, I have 1-year-old, 2-year-old kids.
Read to them. Don't pressure them at that age to read. They're still learning how to communicate. They're still connecting their thoughts and their feelings with who is in their environment, what in their environment is going to make them feel better. That's not an age to teach them, to stress them about reading. If it comes naturally to them, it comes naturally to them. My daughter was reading by the time she was 3. Just, that was her thing. My son, same exposure to literature. He was reading more compared to her. He was reading better by the time he was 6 or 7.
See, big difference.
Huge difference. Same exposure, same parent, had to do with their developmental readiness.
Yeah. So don't have compare.
Never compare. We're all different, and we should all celebrate our differences. Whether we're children in school or we're adults, we should celebrate our differences and uniqueness and build from each other. But in terms of a parent with a child that's younger and you're concerned about them reading or want to start looking at it and moving that direction, read to them. Don't attach stress with reading.
How long should the sessions be? Like how many?
Again, that's something that's unique to each child. Some children can sit still for an entire, most story picture books are around 32 pages. Some children can sit still for the whole story and they can talk about it and then they want to look back at the pictures. Some can make it for 4 or 5 pages and then that something in the book might inspire them to go create something or what have you. And that's fine too at that age. However long they can sit for, read to them that amount of time. Let them see you reading. Let them see you reading.
I like that.
That's very important, even if they see you reading a cereal box.
But reading. Physical stuff, right? Not on the phone.
Physical stuff. And sometimes, I have a great niece and sometimes we don't have a book and she wants to read a book and I'll pull it up on my phone. There's so many free ebooks out there, even children's books. But she knows it's a book. She knows that if we have a book available, then we're going to read the real book. But technology is their future. So we can't discount the technology that's available to them. We need to make sure that we teach them to use the technology that's available to them responsibly and for benefit.
Yeah. And set some boundaries, right? Set some boundaries around it.
Use it correctly, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Read to your children, have books there, and do not ever associate reading with tension, anxiety, and anger.
Yeah.
It should be a time, if you're going to read to your child, no matter what the situation, hold them, put your arm around them, put in a snuggle somewhere. Because when you're reading to the child, you're not just focusing on reading, you're building your relationship with them. And it creates a sense of calm and comfort to the concept of reading, which is very important as well.
And you're also connecting deeply with your child during these times, right? It's you created a tradition around with your daughter, right?
Yes, even in college, when she's doing her college courses from home, she'll bring her big 4-inch thick literature book in there and sit down and read it with me.
Nice.
Sometimes she reads it to herself and sometimes she still says, Mama, you read this page. And
Mm.
that's great.
You made her connected. I mean, you guys are connected at a different level, right? It's a true connection. Yeah. So if you're young parents, don't compare, is what you're saying, and also read to them. Don't expect them to read. Don't bother comparing your child to your other kids or your friends' kids. So that sometimes we compare to our friends' kids. They're like
Very
showing off. See
Yeah.
my daughter, she's already reading it too. And you're like, oh, my son's not even saying a word. That's okay. That's okay. You just have
That
to
is
take.
perfectly okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes when a child reads early, it's not the best thing for the child in the long run.
Why is that? Bored? They get
Well,
bored?
no, it has to do with their comprehension. For
They may have
example, in school this year, we had a 4-year-old who was reading at about a 6th grade reading level, which was great. But she was reading her reading came so easily to her, and they didn't really teach her. She picked it up on her own by hanging around her big brother, from what the parents have said. But the content that was hard enough to keep her occupied was not content that was understandable and relatable to a 4-year-old child. So, yes, she could call words, but when she gets older, we've got to really focus on her comprehension because she has skipped so many steps in the development of being able to call words and read at an early age that the concepts in the development of her comprehension have likely been skipped. So, like, I've seen kids that struggle with reading and kids that reading comes very easily to them, like the little girl I was referring to. By around 4th grade, their reading levels are going to pretty much average out, and the difference is going to be in their comprehensions. So, if we push a child to read too fast, then they're going to likely have some gaps in the foundation of their comprehension and understanding. Well, it doesn't really matter how well we can call words. If we can't attach meaning to it, then are we really reading?
Yes.
So it's not always a great thing.
And
for
then
a
you
child.
quickly lose confidence too, right? Because now you don't know how to answer stuff. Because then
Mhm.
comes writing along with comprehension. Comes
Exactly.
writing. You have
Yes,
to
and oddly, it affects some of them in math. For example, my daughter, reading came super easy to her. But by the time she was in 6th grade and math was more challenging, she had never had to work very hard at anything academically because reading came so naturally. So it made learning something new very scary to her. She hadn't experienced having to struggle and read something new and learn something new. So math was like, whoa, that's another language. And she was scared.
Yep.
And even going into college, she was scared of math.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. So that's really interesting. So parents who are listening, that's really interesting. Now here, I hear a lot of parents say, my kid's not reading, but then it, as you say, it averages out. And then just because you start reading early doesn't mean you have the comprehension part. And you may be reading above your grade level, but so what, right? It comes to so what? What's the other stuff?
Yeah. If you really want to help make sure your child is a strong reader when they get to the school age or even a little bit before school age, 4 or 5, that's not too early for children to begin reading. Talk to them. If you think about the progression of our language, we have to speak it before we can read it on a piece of paper and know what it means. We have to read it before we can write it and know what it means. So there's a progression through it. And if any of those steps in the progression are mislearned or not learned or not reinforced, then it's going to cause an issue at some point later on that will need to be addressed. So having strong communication and verbal vocabulary is very, very important to their reading success as well.
Yeah, I know that even high achieving, right? Gifted students have the same thing. They're gifted in certain areas, but some area might be. That's why we, as holistic neurogrowth learning success coach, we don't put any labels on anybody, right? Basically, how do you learn? I'm just curious, how do you learn?
I learn by reading and then writing it. That's how I learn. If I just read it, I'm not likely to retain it.
Me neither. I have to write it, and I have to write it by hand. I mean, not even type it. I need a pencil or pen to write it on a piece of paper. Then it's locked into my brain.
See, I can't handwrite it. I have to read it and then type it in my own words.
See, we're different.
Very different. Same outcome.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how we get there. It just matters that we can have our learning styles identified, recognized, and shown how to use our learning styles to our advantage. And that's what we do.
And that's the unique part of what you offer is really figuring out with the child, like you're an individual. You have your own strength. Like you have a superpower you're born with. Let's figure that out and let's play on that, right? Like let's put fire on that so it you can boost your instead of focusing on all the negative stuff and all the where I'm struggling or my weaknesses, because we all learn differently.
Right.
Here we are. We just talked about it. I love writing. I have like 4 books around me right now, writing, handwritten stuff. I bought an iPad to write with the pencil, like the electric pen. I haven't even used it. I bought it saying I'm going to take notes on it. I go back to my books, and
Yeah.
even my schedule. I have it right here. It has to be written out. If I don't write it out, I won't even remember my meeting. It could be on my phone. No, but it doesn't matter. It has to be written in this book, and then I will be there. So everybody learns different. That's what we're learning right now, right? As parents, if you're listening, really don't compare your kids. Just let them be how they learn, and everybody will reach milestone. Obviously, milestones are missing. There is a time you have to look into it, but just be open and curious about how your child learn versus is there something wrong with them. Like, I don't like to go directly. I find parents are like, I mean, it's not their fault. Our culture is driven that way, right? Society is driven
Very
that
much
way.
is.
We're always looking for a category to place us into.
That's very true.
Yeah, so that's also hard for a lot of parents, because then they're like, if my kid's not reading by 2, then he must have some delay, or she must have
Yes.
some delay. Then now we're figuring out what delay is this. Instead,
I think that we wouldn't feel like our kids had so many delays if we didn't have a system that was so structured, which the educational system is structured to the middle. And I feel like our educational system does not allow us to see the kids individually, where they are and where they need to go individually. And we're trying to help them all get there at the same time. And it's not feasible. It's not feasible. So we really
and we
have
do
to
have in the classroom, we say we're going to customize it, we're going to differentiate it. It's just all those are just kind of words, right? Buzzwords. Which it's hard to do it. It's hard to do it when the system is designed to push through a crowd of kids through a grade. How can you differentiate, and how much can you differentiate?
I had a talk about this the other day with some colleagues. Our differentiation, what they push on us is not doing it, it's documenting it.
Oh, I see. Even better.
So I wonder how much, and I'm not in a classroom anymore. I'm not going to pretend to know for sure, but I wonder how much of that differentiation is actually happening as opposed to how much it is documented because it's a requirement from all of the external forces that are impacting our classrooms, because it's not physically feasible in the amount of time they have to do what they're needing to do in terms of differentiating instruction.
Yeah, and if you have behaviors of some kids who are not able to, regulate themselves in these classes, forget it. How can you, right?
Right. And I think that we need to clue in at some level that those behaviors are oftentimes a response to the kids not being in an environment where they can learn and be successful.
Yeah.
Not
And
that it's
bored.
not
They're
not
bored
that
or too hard, right?
they're bored, or they're in a state of fight or flight because they don't understand.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how many of us want to sit there passively and say, yes, ma'am, I'll do my best, when we feel nothing but failure and anxiety?
Exactly. Yep. I always put myself into the situation. When I was in classes, when I didn't understand stuff, even math class. I now coach math, but when I didn't understand, it was like, when's this class over? Sometimes you even wish, is there going to be a fire drill? Maybe half of this class will be missed. You know what I mean? This is kind
Maybe
of
you'll forget this lesson if the fire alarm goes off.
That's what I mean. Half of the lesson will be missed. So is anyone going to pull the fire alarm? Like, that's kind of what you go through, and then you doodle in the book. That's why I'm a big writer, because I have to write with hand, because I used to doodle all like 5-6 pages will be filled with doodles, because my brain just doesn't stay in, because I want to escape.
Yes.
So I just put myself back into when I was trying to learn, and when it wasn't suitable for me, I didn't understand it. I didn't feel like included, so many things, right? Just not even the content, but what about
Right.
your feelings when you don't feel like you have friends in the classroom, when you feel like they're not, accepted in the classroom, then all of those things also makes you want to. So yeah, you're right. So classroom dynamics is so many things are playing, so many variables are playing. So differentiation is not possible.
No,
It's
it's
hard.
not.
It's hard.
And then some of the kids that have the misbehaviors or what have you, they would be bored. They are probably very likely to be able to learn that content, but the delivery method or the concept, the topic is not connecting to them. And that's something that we can do as holistic neurogrowth learning success coaches, is make content connect to the student so that not only are they interested in it, but they can form that long-term mental connection with the learning and put it into long-term memory so they can retrieve it and use that and build on it at a later time.
Absolutely. So what grade levels do your programs go up to?
Right now I'm working with ages about 6 to, my oldest one at the moment is 6th grade. So I cover a broad level of ranges. In fact, in regards to writing, I mostly work with college level students who are making that transition from early stages of writing to full developed essays that are written with a purpose. That's often in the time constraints that are put on kids at school. That's often something that is very lacking, is how to write the essays and the level and quality that are required in college. So I pretty much work with all grade levels. Reading is reading. It just changes in difficulty and complexity and interests. And the same with writing. It's a skill that builds upon itself. And when there's gaps, it does affect the productiveness of the writing and the comprehension of the reading. So I find those gaps, close those gaps, and then help the kids move forward. One of the things that I have to offer is breaking barriers. And one of my pillars is breaking barriers. And that's breaking through that. It's too hard. I don't know what to write. I don't know. Teacher never taught me that. So we break through those barriers, just bust them down and move around them.
Yeah, love it. So you're working with some students, and one of the students' mom even wanted to thank you even more and sent you some extra gift in terms of, of wanting to thank you because you changed their, most importantly, not the reading component, but most importantly, how he was interacting with her.
Yes, I have a homeschool student, and I was working with him specifically on reading, but mother was having difficulty getting him to do his math. So I was like, well, show me what you need him to work on. And I'm definitely not a math specialist by any means. And just send me what you need to work on, what you want to work on with him next week. And I'll do it. I'll do it. And he worked for me. And because he and his mother stopped having that anxiety that every time they were together outside of the homeschool setting, at dinner or with family, out on vacation, that math anxiety was still there. So I removed that. And he has now completed mastery in 3 of his topics on math that she wanted him to work on.
Nice.
And so I was like, wow.
Yeah, because you taught him how to learn.
Right. I taught him how to
and
learn.
What did you say earlier? Break the barriers?
We're breaking barriers.
You're breaking barriers. You're blasting barriers.
And not only did it break his barriers academically, but it broke the barriers between he and his mom.
Yeah, exactly.
And it improved their relationship to the point that she called me one night after a lesson and said, I don't know what you just did to my son, but he came in and asked me to help him make his supper. And she said, we laughed. We haven't laughed together since we started this homeschool journey. So that was a very touching moment. But yes, she sent me an extra, well, more than a normal tuition for that, what would have been for that week as a thank you for just giving them that time together to enjoy and not stress about math.
Because a lot of the time we take our kids out to homeschool, but then we don't really have proper guidance, right? Because the last thing you want to do is take your kid out of home to homeschool and start nagging all the time, and your relationship goes, build more barriers than you ever want to. Keep building them and building them. It becomes like a big wall that you need you need somebody like Judy to come and blast them.
Blast the walls. Parenting is so hard.
Yeah.
In a standard situation. And it's so admirable for parents to take on that commitment and sacrifice to homeschool their kids.
Yes.
Because there is so much that we need to keep them away from in today's society that they're exposed to in the public school setting. But man, it adds a new level of hard to parenting, especially with teens.
Yes.
So sometimes it just takes an extra person to come in and say, let's change the dynamic and let's reroute what we're doing for a little bit.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Relationship is so important between parents and the child. It's so important. There's nothing, the academics can come and go, but relationship, if you break it, it's hard to then ever get back that. It's hard for sure.
Right.
It's definitely hard. So yeah, I'm so glad that she saw through that and she was able to have her son back.
She is. And in fact, now she has me working with him on reading and doing his homeschool for math.
Oh, nice.
So
there you go. There you
it's
go.
been an interesting turn of events there. I never thought I would be teaching 6th grade math. Here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more he believes in himself and more he knows how to learn, he'll do it on his own. The content is never the problem when kids know how to control their mind and how to work. Right?
Yes, that's true. We just have so much outside pressure coming on to all of us as adults and as children, especially in situations where there's a lot of peer pressure and all of the craziness going on in the schools, that it's hard to learn in those environments.
Yes.
And it's hard for us as adults to function sometimes in our environments. So I think we all need to learn how to break down those walls, break those barriers.
Absolutely. So if there was an older parent, not older kids, they have older kids, let's say, I know you don't work with them, but you have experience, your own kids too, right? What if they're not reading at the higher level? Like nobody has helped them yet. They pass through it because we know some kids are graduating without knowing how to read.
Fall through the cracks. Yeah. Yes.
What do we do? What can I do as a parent if I have a teenager who's still not reading properly?
They need to get their child a holistic neurogrowth learning success coach because there are gaps. And just because your child's not reading, and let's say they're in 9th grade or even a high school graduate and they're not reading fluently, that doesn't mean that they can't. That means that they need someone skilled to go back and find where was there a gap. We need to go in and fix the foundation.
Yes.
We would not move out of a house because it has a little bit of a foundation issue. We can fix it, but we need a skilled technician to fix it. And that's what we are. We're skilled technicians. We can find that gap. We can close that gap and then bring them back up to where they need to be relatively quickly once the issue is found.
Yes. Yes. How is it? Like a lot of parents don't know the difference. So do you want to explain to us what's the difference between a tutor and what you do, Judy, now? And then you've been a tutor too before. So
yes, I have. Yes, for college level. Yes, for several years. A tutor looks at an immediate problem, almost like a handyman versus a construction or a foundation specialist. Yes, an expert. We call a handyman, this light switch isn't working. I need you to come in and fix it. Okay, yes, ma'am. That'll take me an hour and a half and I'll fix that light switch. But an electrician could come in and say, oh, goodness, we don't want to fix that light switch. There's a short up in the wall, and that could result in a fire. So it's a different level of being able to assess the problem and address the problem. We can fix lots of things with a quick Band-Aid and move on. But that problem is eventually going to resurface. And that same thing happens with tutors. They can cover something relatively quickly. They can put a Band-Aid on it, but if they don't take care of what they're putting that Band-Aid on, it's going to fester and it's going to reappear and it might even be worse.
Yeah.
So
now you got me thinking. We've been working on our house this weekend. So you got me thinking, like, if I got a plumber, not an expert plumber, but an okay plumber, he comes and fixes, I tell him, here's a leak, can you fix this? He fixes it, but he doesn't have the knowledge he doesn't holistically look at all my pipes or whatever. And he fixes it, but it still leaks. And after a year, I find out that there's been leaking all over, and I have a bigger damage now. Isn't that sort of what happens to our kids with tutors, right? Because
it really is. Because
the tutoring, we don't really get a lot of time. I've been a tutor too for many, many years, so I don't get a lot of time. Parents coming to me wants that, quick results, like, immediate problem, fix it, right? So it's sort of like that. We don't give the time. So they're not prepared and they're not trained and they're not working holistically to fix anything. So yeah, it could be a big leak later on and you're going to have to fix that big damages.
Yes, exactly. A tutor can help a child finish a job, finish an assignment.
Yeah, yeah.
But just because they can finish it with a tutor and score well on it, when it comes time to do a similar task independently, they're not going to have the confidence or the ability or the knowledge or the background to be able to complete it successfully. So then you help them accomplish it. They might have gotten a 90 on that assignment that the tutor helped them with. But then when they do it on a test or they do it on their own, all of a sudden they make a 40 on it and they thought they knew it.
Yep.
It's like having a worse problem behind the scenes. You've taken a child who was struggling, you've given them a big chunk of success, a feeling of success, and then because we just put a Band-Aid on it, we then allowed that success to be yanked out from under them. Why would we want our kids to go through that when we can have their educational gaps fixed with a coach to begin with?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that just doesn't give them anything. There's a false confidence, right? It's
false confidence, exactly.
Yeah, and it fails miserably, and then kids feel actually even more failure after that has happened.
They do, because they think they had it, especially when I've worked with high school and college kids with writing, and then they're like, oh, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I get those same kids coming right back because when they had to write that essay in class, they couldn't do it.
It's not consistent. It's not their knowledge. It's a shared knowledge, right?
And when they do it in a different class, oh, well, that's a different situation. I don't have that connection to make to be able to produce this in another environment or another topic.
No, it's not. Yeah, it doesn't transfer. The skill that a tutor can give them in that immediate surrounding doesn't transfer into other scenarios. Right. It's a new scenario. I don't know how to do that, right? I've seen that too.
Whereas if I had the ability with those tutoring students to go beneath the surface and find out what was causing them to struggle, what was the block, then we could have fixed it and moved on.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else you want to share with parents about your program, what you do?
I'd like to leave parents with the thought of being positive. It's so easy to get frustrated with our kids, especially when they're struggling to do something. But getting mad and yelling at them is not going to fix it. In fact, it's going to make it harder for them to overcome it.
So what should I do?
They need support. They need support. If your child is struggling, no amount of yelling or grounding is going to fix it. No amount of grounding them and making them study extra is going to fix it. They need to find them the resource that they need to solve their problem.
And the real problem. Right?
The real problem, yes, which is connecting with the holistic neurogrowth learning success coach.
Yeah, really get to the real cause, the root cause of the problem, because a lot of the time we kind of, being part of this sick care system, we don't have a healthcare system. We usually have the sick care, right? We get sick and we get cared for that. Sort of like that when it comes to this too. We just fixed the symptoms, but it's not really going to the real problem. It's always going to be fixing the symptom. What about fixing the actual problem that our kids have? And that means you don't have to yell. That means your relationship will improve. That means you have less anxiety as a parent, and you can focus on building stronger relationship.
Yes, which is so important.
Yeah, and creating some traditions like you've done with your daughter.
Our time with our children is precious and it's limited, and we need to make the most of every moment while making them ready to be successful, independent adults in the future. Absolutely. And sometimes that means we need to reach out for help, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Utilize the resources that are available to you. Absolutely. And we're available and we're ready to help.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy. I love your program. I love how you coach your students. You're so passionate. And as I said, you wanted to do this. You've done all your years. How much was it? 31 years?
I've completed 29.
29
years.
9 years. You've done the service, and thank you for that. That's a long time. Thank you. And you wanted to serve in an even better, meaningful, powerful way, and you're doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Our purpose for this episode was to spark a reevaluation of the current education system. For more episodes offering practical and comprehensive strategies to enhance learning, please visit www.learningsuccessacademy.com. It is crucial to ensure that children have access to the holistic neurogrowth learning approach, enabling them to break free from the constraints of an outdated educational framework. This is your opportunity to gain insight and break away from a flawed system, setting your children on a path to lifelong success that truly nurtures their thirst for knowledge. That's all for now. We look forward to having you join us for the next episode.